Welcome to the Rick Helps Real Estate Show, where after a while, the little voice in your head says, why am I watching this? Welcome, Sam Degreen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You know, people don't know the background stuff that goes on in some of these things. We're both logged in and we're just sitting there telling funny stories and everything. And I look down and go, oh, it's 8:30.
Well, and I was telling you, I thought I logged in late. I was frantic to get on here. I'm going, go. I put up a whole new string of curse words. It was yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad we're on.
If I'm late for anything, I'm very stressed.
It's
which
horrible.
Which is probably explains why my first marriage didn't last, because she could care less.
That's the way. Oh man, that's not good. Because my wife's the same way. I'm like, it's like herding a cat. I go, Kelsey, let's go. Nope.
She finally said, don't tell me what time we have to be there. Tell me what time I have to be ready to leave. Because she had no time. And she thought everything was in Scottsdale. And I go, no, this is in Litchfield. And so anyway.
I'd tell her the wrong time. If her flight was at 1, I'd say we have to be there, or your flight's at noon. And then we'd be on time. Did that a couple times. She was not too happy.
Yeah, that's only going to last so long. So
yeah.
Well, it's good to have you come back again, because I think, I get stuck in this small little real estate window, and I like to look at things that are outside of real estate, because we look and say, okay, here's the inventory, but what could make it go up? What can change financing? And Sam, in my industry, I get all my information from title companies, title reps, and their job is to make sure that we're optimistic about real estate and how to sell it and stuff. And I get it from lenders, and sometimes you can just end up in this little funnel where you're not looking at anything outside. So I really like, taking a macro view with you and saying, where do we think stuff is going? Because right now our inventory number is still at 4,700 right now. It's not budging.
I was surprised by that, actually, because the price of commodities is so high. I know startups, Bloomberg this morning reported that startups were a little slow. I don't know if that's something we're seeing in this market, but across the country, I don't know if you can confirm this or not. Are we seeing a slowdown?
In real estate?
In new startups, like a new startup builds?
No, actually we're not. We, in March, really? There were 3,300 new building permits, which was kind of a record. So the builders are starting to ramp up when it comes to permits, but they, it's still taking them 6 to 8 months to build a house. So we're not seeing a slowdown on that. I think, we're seeing a slight buyer pullback. But you've got normal buyer activity going after, hardly any homes. And so, the biggest change I've seen is in the last 3 months, the balance between the number of listings that were out there and buyers under contract was so aggressive towards, advantageous to sellers, that now we ended up with a 10% price increase over 3-month period.
It's unbelievable.
And it's so the buyer traffic coming down is just people, hitting the unaffordability wall.
And I wonder if we've hit that, what's that ceiling, that affordability ceiling, because there's only so much. I'd have to imagine that there's only so much somebody's willing to pay. I mean, I can refresh the page on Zillow and my home price keeps going up. It's got to stop at a certain point. People are going to feel, but then again, with all the people coming here,
that's how markets balance anyway, right? You get this buyer fatigue and eventually it pulls it back down. But then I always ask the question, where's the buyer fatigue in San Diego? I mean, small houses for 1.2 million, is Arizona going to be the next, Silicon Valley? And so, you can rack your brain trying to figure out where you're going to have fun and say, all of that's great. The analysis is great. But if we don't have more inventory, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And so it's easier to look at rising inventory and then go in and find out why that happened than it is to be able to, to figure it out and, to figure out why it might go up. So, and this is the common question I get all the time. I'm seeing homes in the East Valley increase 20 to 30% annually. Is this sustainable? No, but it can still go on a whole nother year.
I could see that happening, especially with interest rates this low. They're saying, we're going to have record inflation, or not record inflation, but we're going to see an uptick in inflation. After the jobs report last month, I doubt it at this rate.
Yeah, I read an article. I read an article. Yeah, that was terrible. I read an article this morning that was saying the consumer price index rose by almost 1% in April for a 4.2% increase, according to the Department of Labor. But it's, compared to last year when everything was all shut down and nobody was buying anything. So I'm leaning towards agreeing with Chairman Powell that said, don't overreact. This is a temporary problem. And then my concern is that Congress will overreact. They always want to feel like they got to do something. And they may be saying, we need rates up, and then they could derail what would be a natural recovery. I mean, am I far off on that?
No, you're not. You're seeing a lot of the rhetoric come out of Washington. Who the heck knows what kind of tax bill we'd see if there was going to be a tax increase? The one benefit, I guess you could say, is we would probably see a repeal of the or a reinstatement of the SALT deduction, because I can't tell you the number of Democratic senators who are up for re-election in 2022, many of whom were elected to get that SALT deduction back. So there's a lot of people who are not going to go along with Biden's agenda here if he doesn't repeal that SALT deduction. That is one of the biggest things for Democrats. So without that, and I don't know what that would mean for real estate prices. I don't know historically, perhaps how that kind of stuff affects real estate, or if it has any effect. I know tax rates can kind of, surprisingly, they don't affect markets as much, the stock market, but they do affect other markets. So it'll be interesting to see here. But
well, if you end up increasing the capital gains rate, and I've addressed it a couple times on the channel, right? And I'm, not an economist, so I just kind of look and go, okay, if I'm an investor and I own several homes and I bought them in 2012, I'm making some serious bank right now, right?
Oh yeah.
Again, now maybe not because of the rent moratorium, but all things being equal, the math is there, and so if I sell them now, today, I'll have a capital gains rate of, 27%, but the new proposal is to put it up to 39%. So now I got to go, if I sell it next year, I got 12% more in capital gains. So now you got a choice. Do I really want to sell because I'm making good money on these? And if I do sell, maybe I'll just wait it out and see if we have a new Congress. Right?
Well, and it's the same. The capital gains rate would then be the same as the highest ordinary income tax rate. All things stay the same. So I don't know that anybody sells, but at the same time, what I am seeing are a lot of people selling in anticipation that something happens. In fact, that's probably the number one. We're seeing a lot of real estate people come in who, they have this big diversified portfolio of real estate, and they're going, I'm not going to take the chance on that. I've accumulated a large amount of gains, and why would I want to pay ordinary income tax? It's morally wrong too.
Well, so that's an interesting thought. So you're seeing more people coming in with a lot of real estate portfolio and saying they're probably going to pull the trigger.
Oh yeah.
See, now that's interesting, because that's going to help with inventory, but we may not see it because it's being gobbled up as soon as it goes on. I mean, the numbers look, they look big as far as a percentage, but we still had only 129 more homes come on than went under contract. Over the last week. It's like, it's so tiny.
That is unbelievable.
But what about the large groups like the Black Knight that owns, thousands of rentals across the country, if not millions? Is that going to participate? It's going to make them make a move?
I've been thinking about Wall Street getting involved in this. They always screw it up. They always screw it up. They always get over leveraged. They always get a little too greedy. Rick, to be honest, I think that becomes a big target for the Democrats. And I think it becomes a big target politically. All these people coming in, these big groups, and just gobbling up houses and then jacking up rates, or rent rates. So, it really is going to be interesting to see here over the next 6 to 12 months, especially as politically, or as the 2022 midterms come up. That's what it's all about now. It's all about news.
Yeah. I don't see a lot of it passing. So,
no.
There's another infrastructure bill that's being put together now. That's going to be interesting. But I have a comment here that says, personally, I think $1,500, $1,800 for a monthly house payment is the top end many families can afford for starter homes. And I think we're pretty much there. I think so too.
Yeah, that's about what I pay. When I purchased my house, it was like 25, and that was still too much, and luckily we refinanced it down. But yeah, I agree. I agree.
I'm seeing a lot of high incomes out there too, and especially in millennials. I'm seeing.
Are you really?
Yeah,
because we're always told that they're the ones doing the worst.
When they come to me and they're ready to buy a house, I'm always stunned how much money they have in the bank. And there's a young couple out there that he makes $100,000 in his job, and she makes $100,000 in hers, and they're looking in the 350 price range, and they're not sure. And it's like, it's a tough one. So there is some money out there. I
think you could push a little harder too, with a $200,000 income and $350,000 house.
My poor son, he lives in Burbank, and he said, Dad, if I lived in Arizona, I could easily afford to buy a house, but I can't.
Acreage.
And I said, well, but your company can't move, can they? And because it's an animation company. And he said, no. And one of the reasons is we use a lot of voice actors, so they get, people, celebrities that come in and, and do the voices for these characters that they got. And he goes, we're not going to fly them to like Texas or Idaho or anything. We just, they're down the street. So it's pretty easy to get, what's the guy from Breaking Bad, Cranston?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He comes in there all the time and does voiceovers. So he says, you can't get anybody to fly over and do it. And then they got to come into the studio to do it. So
I can't unsee him from Malcolm in the Middle as Hal. I just think of Hal as like a meth head in Breaking Bad. I can't see him as anything else.
Well, he's
amazing though.
Show that they have is pretty funny. But getting back to inflation for a second, because inflation on its own doesn't correlate with real estate prices.
Okay.
In other words, high inflation historically, for example, the late 70s and 80s, real estate was going down, but it not going when inflation was going up. And the reason is the interest rate flew up. So the inflation can have an effect on housing if the central bank decides it's time to put on the brakes. Then that affects prices. So we're not hearing any rhetoric that they're even talking about that. Are you seeing any data that maybe they should consider it?
No, I'm not. And, I think it was I think it was 2 days ago, you asked whether real estate's starting to look attractive as an investor. I would say, yeah, I think it has been over the past 12 months. Right now, though, we're seeing a lot of REITs and publicly traded companies like that. starting to look pretty good, especially a lot of people are using these in lieu of savings accounts, which is something because you can't earn interest at the bank. What do you earn? 0.1% all year.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing a lot of people use publicly traded REITs. Maybe not the best idea, but we're seeing a lot of that happen too as a way to earn interest. But yeah, it's bizarre. I'm wondering if people migrating here are buying some. Yeah. Wait until they get that bill.
You know, they're not prepared for it. When you stand in a house and you go, you know, the 2-story house built in the 90s, and you got to say, you know, your AC bill is going to be between $400 and $600 a month in this house unless you make some changes. And they're, you know, and so, you know, there's a home we're selling now that, fortunately, it has solar, but you know, they have to lease it. So they're saying, well, the solar payment's $180 a month, but your electric bill in the summer might only be $100 versus $600. But if you want to buy solar panels to put on your house, that's about 45 grand. So where's the payback there? So the good move for you. So let's say you got a $400,000 house and you put $45,000 of solar panels on there. It's not worth $445,000 now.
No.
So when the buyer comes in and you need to sell, you're not going to get your money back in the short term on your solar panels. But if you're buying a house and it comes with owned solar panels, you can come out pretty sweet on your bills. But the leased ones, it all depends on the payment plan and everything like they have for Tesla, because those lease payments keep going up. And
that's interesting. I'm starting to see a lot of those in Scott. It's amazing to me that they can't create ones that aren't ugly
or that last more than 10 years.
Really? Do they die?
They kind of burn out. Yeah. So they get old. And if they don't get old, then the technology gets better. So, you know, I would love to see solar panels that could do a house that, you know, and it's only just, you know, hanging on the chimney. It's real tiny.
Yeah.
But that's one of the problems with solar is it takes so much space, and you know, they're not going to put solar panels on a bad roof. So you got a home that's built in 97. It might need new underlayment, might be close to it. Well, now you got to rip all the tiles off, put the underlayment on, make sure you got the weight support, which in Arizona you do because they're holding the tiles. And then you put solar panels, because you don't want to put solar panels on and then in 5 years need a new roof. So when so it's going back to inflation again and interest rates. I'm seeing, do you watch Stephen Van Meter at all? He calls himself the Bond King.
No.
Very, very entertaining guy. And man, he shares some enlightening data. For those watching, look up Stephen Van Meter. He does his show with this old style paneling in the back room. You know, it looks like he lives in some kind of Rambler in St. Louis, and he talks really fast, but he goes running through the charts, and he's showing that overall lending is going down and interest rates starting to go up. And he goes, they're going to turn down. And he's showing Fed data that's showing that interest rates next year are looking like they're going to be lower than this year. And it's the exact opposite of everything that we're seeing and being told.
You know, when Wall Street says something, you should probably expect the opposite. That's usually the contrarian attitude usually works out pretty well in the long run. You know, the thing with inflation, why there's a billion people in participating at any given point in the marketplace. More money exchanges hands on Wall Street in 15 minutes than in all year in Las Vegas. So you have millions of buyers and sellers for all different reasons. What's moving those interest rates? Thousands of different things. I don't know that it's any one definitive thing. The biggest thing that I see is how we measure inflation. That's the biggest problem. You know, you talked about the consumer price index that says, well, you know, it's up 1% or whatever year over year. That excludes a lot of volatile things like food and energy and stuff like that. So I'm thinking, well, what, do those not count? Do those
Yeah, I
expenses
don't
not
understand
count?
how they can exclude food. I really don't get that. That's
Or
our
medical
major
costs?
expense. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta eat to live. What? So I don't care if it's volatile. That's not my problem. That's well, it is my problem, but you can't exclude it from the measurement. So I don't think anyone really knows what the true inflation rate is right now. And I know as a financial advisor, that's the last thing you want to say. But there are so many things that go into that number. There's just no accurate way to measure it. That's the thing. It used to be based on risk. It's not so much anymore. It's based on prices.
Well, going into next year, I'm not seeing, one of the things you can count on is when you see a inventory number that's as low as it is, and you see that rates aren't changing, it's easy to assume that we're going to have these double-digit price increases 6 months out. It's the cake's already baked, right?
Yeah.
And I try not to go because I can't. I don't know what third quarter 2022 is going to look like, but economically, are you seeing any numbers at all that say the economy may not spring back as fast as we think, or may be a bit of a slowdown, or because there was talk that things were going to take off like crazy? And I don't mean April to April, because looking at numbers now, I mean, that's when we were all locked in our houses and staying in and stuff. So what kind of data are you guys seeing that tells the story of next year?
Well, the latest one was the jobs number that came out. So for those of you who are not familiar with that jobs number that came out, that was just abysmal. That changed the narrative overnight. It was supposed to be about, economists were saying 1 to 2 million jobs. They're saying, oh, this is going to be huge. Oh, all this pent up demand's here. And we got 200,000 jobs. So that was the biggest miss in the history of Wall Street by economists. So that could be something happening. Although at the same time, we had a blowout jobs number in March. So I don't know whether it was just, maybe the economists were all wrong, or maybe that unemployment, the extra $300 a week, I think it is playing a role. It's going to be interesting to see, though.
I think that's a real problem too, because I mean, you talk to people that own restaurants, and they go, I've got people that want to work part-time, but I end up working them full-time because I can't get the other part-timers to come in because they're making more money on their unemployment. So the full-timers are complaining, going, I didn't want to work 35, 40 hours, only wanted it to be 20. And,
yeah, in places like McDonald's, they're paying people $500 just to, get on board.
Just
like
to
you
come
get a
back.
you get a sign-up bonus for McDonald's. I mean, a $500 sign-up, that's pretty, of course, then you can bail the next week, I'd imagine. But there's a lot of problems hiring. We have all these jobs out there, but nobody wants them. And I think that's a story nobody's talking about. And to be honest, I think it's a pretty complex issue, because you have people that you and I would wake up and do this whether we were making a ton of money or not, because we love it. Why people wouldn't want to go back to work over an extra $100, $200 a week, I get mathematically, but there's more to a job than just money. And so I wonder if perhaps those jobs do remain unfilled for a while. I think a lot of people just said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to go start my own business. I'm going to go do this. Or,
well, now you've got
the risk.
The child tax credit going out, what, next week?
I've yet to receive mine. Yeah, you have the child tax credit. Oh man, there's so many little goodies that just keep getting passed. I mean, I find new ones each week. House Ways and Means Committee just passed the Secure Act 2.0, which is going to be interesting for millennials because it allows them to pay off student loan debt instead of contribute to their 401k. That, I think, would increase the demand for housing too.
So they get to deduct.
They get to use their employer match to pay it off.
Oh, interesting.
And I thought that was really interesting. In fact, that would essentially, if you're doubling, your payments on a lot of, the first couple percent of your income, what's the one thing holding people back from buying houses? Student loan debt.
Yeah.
And that pales. That number, the student loan debt, I think it's probably now it's $2 trillion. That's nothing compared, or that's like twice as large as the financial crisis. So something's got to give. There's a lot of things that have to give here. And so that's the thing is the inflation numbers, they don't tell the whole story. They really don't. I think job satisfaction too is going to play a huge role. And I think some people are just going to go, yeah, I don't want to go back and bust my butt for, work a job that's going nowhere.
Yeah. It's there's a lot that plays into it. It's interesting. I shared this with everybody yesterday, and I wanted to show it to you too. And it's how money walks.
Boy, is it walking.
Yeah. So the red states, so you look at that, but what's interesting, you go to Illinois, right? Everybody's leaving Illinois, but they're not really leaving Illinois, because when you look at the map, they're just leaving Chicago, right?
Can't blame them.
Then when you go to New York, well, let me go back to that again, because green means people are coming in, right? So just outside of Chicago. So COVID has said, well, I don't have to live here. I can live in the burbs, right? So they're just moving out here. And when you go to New York, and I used to live in upstate New York for about 3 years and loved it. And this was my favorite area here, which is Saratoga County. So people are moving from here and Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo and going to Saratoga Springs, by the horse track and the beautiful homes up there. And they're like, hey, if I got to work, out of my house, I'm going to go to better ones. So you'll see a big red dot around the whole state of New York. And these people are going to Florida, but a lot of them are staying within the state, because that's where they live. Now in Arizona, we're blaming everything on Californians. And to a large extent, we're right. 11.5 billion of gained wealth came from California. And now this is money that's coming, what people are earning, their adjusted gross income. And then number two is Illinois, which is about half of what we're getting from, not even half of what we're getting from California.
That's the bottom, 4 combined. California.
Yep.
Jeez.
But then, so then you got to say, well, let's go look at California for a second. Okay. Because it shows you where they're going. And so it's saying that more of them are going to Nevada than Arizona. So they're going to Reno and Las Vegas. And that's why the Las Vegas real estate market hasn't tanked, despite the fact that the whole city was shut down. Is because, 16.9 billion went to Nevada.
I'd imagine it's easier to get a permit.
Yeah.
To get a permit in Nevada, it's just wide open land.
And so, but then people are moving there from New York and Illinois and New Jersey, but not very many. So you look and they're all coming from, they're leaving San Bernardino County and Los Angeles County and Orange County, but they're staying in Riverside County. San Diego's pretty neutral. People aren't coming or going there. And then you've got some people in Alameda County. But I love this chart because it really tells you. So if you're advertising, so you wanted to run some ads, for Arizona real estate, where are you going to run the ads? Right here, right there, and right there. Here. So you wouldn't run it in Riverside County or San Diego because nobody's coming. So
I wonder why no one's going to Utah.
They
going to Utah?
No, Utah is
it's
cold. Look, but they're leaving Salt Lake City.
They're going just into Utah. They don't want to go.
They're going up to Summit County up by Park City up here. So have you ever been to this part of Utah?
No.
Oh, it's beautiful.
I hear Utah as a state is just beautiful. I've always wanted to go up there.
But so they're getting 3.1 billion from California and 307 million from Illinois. Not a lot going in. They lost 386 million to Arizona. That's a drop in the bucket. So anyway, it's an interesting chart. I know a thing that, we're right next to Utah, right? And I had a sales manager here that was going to fly up one day for a meeting, just because it only takes an hour and a half to get there and come back. And he left here and it was 85 degrees. And so he went up with just a polo shirt, gets off the plane in Utah, and it's snowing like crazy. I said,
Oof.
you might want to start checking the weather before you take these trips.
Yeah.
He was complaining.
It's like when I would fly back to Boston for school, I'd always forget how cold it was.
Yeah.
You just get off the plane, you go, oh no.
So what numbers do we need to watch over the next few months that are going to affect our investments or our life in general?
Okay, so one thing that I'm watching, short-term technicals. Usually I like to look at fundamentals. However, given that so much of trading on Wall Street is algorithms, look at the 200-day moving average and look at it for the indexes. You'll see it over a 1, 2, 5, 5-year period. Usually in a 2-year period, it bounces off the 200-day moving average, and it doesn't go any lower than that. It crashes through in March, of course, where there was just no bottom to that pullback. But that's definitely one thing I'm watching. So perhaps if it hits that 200-day moving average, I start buying a lot. Moving averages, though, or something definitely in the short term. I can't tell you how the fundamentals are going to play out because, again, we're seeing such a huge boom in Wall Street earnings, and how much of it is just pent up demand versus new trend. I think we're yet to find out.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. I mean, I don't see a whole bunch of, people are buying used cars like crazy.
Yeah.
There's a shortage of used cars. Appliances never really slowed down. We just can't get them. So just because the economy opens out doesn't mean I'm going to get 2 haircuts instead of 1. So you wonder how much of that is really going to go on, because there's still a lot of, people may have stayed home, but Amazon and UPS were doing great.
They were still spending.
And the spending was so, I don't know how much of that's really going to transfer. I go over to a mall now and it's still dead. It's just, and now you've got mask mandates that are going away, but people aren't taking them. I'm kind of stubborn. I'm like, look, I've had the shot. Okay. I'm only going to put on the mask if your business says I need the mask. Other than that, forget it. I see people riding bikes with their mask on. I don't get it. So, but
I think a lot of people are afraid to take it off just because they don't want to receive
mask shame.
Yeah. They don't want to I think it comes off slowly, but it took Walmart coming out on Friday where they're like, all right, no more. You can just tell us you're vaccinated, whatever. We're over it.
Yeah.
It took Walmart to change it. Usually they sit it out. They don't want to ruffle any political feathers, but I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people like you, Rick, who are, and I feel the same way.
Well, my son and his girlfriend came over from California, and they've been on intense lockdown for a year now.
Oh yeah.
And it's just habit for them to get out of the car and they put on the mask and look at me and I go,
yeah,
we're going to go have breakfast. Yeah. We walk in, there's only like 2 people wearing a mask, and but so it's a habit. It's
it is. It's become a new habit. You almost feel bad for not wearing it. Like I went to the gas station yesterday, and I was like, it says I don't need a mask, but there's a bunch of people in there, and I just don't want to get into it with somebody right now. I'm cranky. I'm tired.
I've got those paper masks that I have. I got a big box of them. I got them. And what I discovered is I've got them laying everywhere. I got one on my dresser. I got one on my kitchen table. I got 2 in the car.
I find them in my pockets.
Yeah.
It's just, they're like guitar picks. They just show up everywhere. It's terrible.
Well, the numbers I'm looking at when I'm looking forward is obviously inventory. But
yes,
I'm not, the $600,000 to $700,000 range. You wouldn't expect to see massive bidding wars out there, but we do. It's insane. We had even the 800,000 range. People are bidding them up. The over 55 community was kind of insulated until, 3 months ago. You could pretty much get one for the asking price, and that party's over. But they're not. You're getting outbid by one or two people, not 10 or 12, like in the regular real estate market. So the numbers that I'm looking at is the bidding activity. That tells me if things are going to slow down. So if I can see right now, like 74% of homes are going above their asking price. If that's starting to come down, then that's a sign. But really, of all the numbers that we watch, it's just the inventory number. So if we're sitting at about 5,000 homes now, and all of a sudden it pops up to 7,000 to 8,000, that ought to be a signal if you're thinking of selling your home that pull the trigger, because that's a trend, and because you're going to be able to sell when the market is still hot and the rest of the general public doesn't even know that inventory went up.
No.
And it won't start showing for another few months. So any changes that you have now are going to, so let's say tomorrow morning we wake up and we've got 7,000 homes instead of 5,000. That's not going to make the news. And it's not going to affect your neighbor's sale. You're still going to go, they had 30 people at their open house and they sold that house in one day. But as an indicator, you've got to pay attention to that. You go, yeah, but did you know that inventory went up by 2,000 homes this morning? No. Well, either did the 30 people that went to the open house. Because most people judge their view of real estate by how many for sale signs are in their block. And then they make their decision. So the data that I'm looking at says, did I lose you?
I think I lost you.
Oh, your battery, maybe your phone just went out. So I can hear you. Yeah.
Work.
Yeah, that happens. Well, what we'll do.
There you are.
Okay. I was just about ready to say goodbye. Yeah, it doesn't. I've got those too. I just haven't used them. I'm old fashioned plugged in.
These things are so grounded.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
they're done.
So anyway, so what I'm saying is, just watch that one number, and that's the one that's going to tell the story on everything. And I track it every day, and I look at it, and every morning get up and I go, oh, it hasn't changed. And I feel bad doing a morning broadcast where I'm saying, well, it's 4,900, but one of these days something in there is going to snap. And, it wasn't interest rate. Interest rates went up, in March, and it didn't affect it one iota.
I've seen a few people who said, we're thinking of selling and going to a different state where their money goes a little bit further.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to go and just buy a place where they're away from everybody. I know we have a couple clients who are moving to Wyoming, which surprisingly is actually just a lot of activity going on there. We got a lot of, I think you're going to see that trend too. I think people are just going to go, you know what? I'll sell my house and leave the state, the price. I wonder if we see that. People are going to get sick of, it's starting to, it feels very cramped.
It could be, because I think, we're going to have some concerns here. We're already having concerns over water. We have a lot of job growth going here. And if we end up with building restrictions because of water, then real estate's going to go through the roof because nobody can get a new permit for a new development. And I went out to one at Sun City West, and they were saying that in this one development that they had their own underground water system, their own aquifer. And I was thinking, yeah, but that water still comes from up here. So we haven't had rain. So it's not like you have an unlimited unique supply. Ironically, Prescott feels it first before anybody else. Their water supply tends to get tighter. So, those are things that'll be concerned, that you can look at over time. I think, high prices will lead to migration out of the state. But with that, keep in mind, there's still people from Illinois and California that'll make, gladly buy your home while you go to Wyoming and freeze. So I think, that's probably going to, we'll probably see some of that, but I don't think very much. I think the numbers to watch, the inventory number in July, will the rent moratorium ending cause more homes to come on the market?
They've delayed that now for a couple times now, haven't they?
Well, they did, but then a court came in and said you don't even have the authority to
Yeah.
to delay it. So they said end of June, and then the court came out in first week of May and said no, you can't do that. So they're going back and forth, but yet by the time they get it sorted out in court, it's going to be the end of June. So no matter what they do there, and that one surprised me. That was done by the CDC.
Which is amazing that they would think
Trump.
they had the power to do that. And Trump would let that happen too, as a real estate guy.
Yeah, he's a real estate guy, but he's not a constitutionalist. He's like, what? I can't do that. Get out of my office.
Yeah,
you're fired. Yeah. So I think, but that's that. If we're looking at anything, we already know that forbearances are not going to hit the market. They're just not coming. But rent moratorium, that's the number that I want to watch. So I want remind everybody you're moving to a new office. The Degreen Wealth Group is moving to where? Cactus and
Tatum and Cactus. It's 1192. I'm still getting the address down. Suite 110, and we'll put the new. We'll have it up on our website today. Actually, it's the deadline. But yeah, we're gonna make the big announcement. The big, what's it called? Reveal party.
Right.
And so
I'll bring the beer.
It's going to be nice. Yeah.
Well, Sam, thanks for joining us again. I look forward to doing this every month and taking a look and see what changes, and we will catch up with you. All right.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Take care.
Yep. Bye-bye.